The first thing I noticed when I woke up was a dull pain in my throat. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. Something hard was lodged in my throat. I blinked and took in my surroundings. A hospital room, with wires and tubes connected all over my body. My left arm was in a cast, and I could feel the tightness of bandages on my face. What the hell happened? How long had I been here? I attempted to move but found it a struggle. Just then, the door opened, and a nurse walked in, checking my vitals and reviewing the chart at the foot of my bed. She didn't speak as she worked, but minutes later, she returned with a man who had to be a doctor. He did the same routine: vitals, eyes, and light, before nodding toward the nurse. They removed the tube from my throat, and I suddenly understood why I couldn't speak earlier. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Mr. Carter," the doctor said, standing upright with a smile. Jason Carter. I tried to talk, but my lips were dry, and my throat felt like sandpaper. The nurse handed me a piece of ice. I sucked on it gratefully. Another one followed. How long?" I croaked. "You've been here 10 days, the doctor replied. "You had a bit of brain swelling, so we induced a coma to give your head time to heal. You also took a severe hit to the head and broke your arm." He turned to the nurse. "Let's notify Mrs. Carter that her husband is awake." I shook my head firmly. "No." The doctor's brow furrowed. "Why not? She's the reason I'm here." I managed to get out between the ice chips. He paused. "I see. Should we contact the police instead?" I nodded. "Yes, and a divorce lawyer." The doctor let out a dry chuckle. "We'll handle the police. As for a lawyer, you'll have to find one yourself." He glanced at the nurse before adding, "Take him to X-ray after this." As they wheeled me back to the room, a man in a trench coat entered, flashing his badge. "Detective Mike Thompson, Metro Police." He introduced himself, pulling up a chair. "Are you able to talk for a few minutes?" I nodded, taking another sip of water. He pulled out a notepad and voice recorder. "Mind if I record this?" "No," I said quietly. He set the recorder on the tray, noted the time, and got right to it. "Okay, Mr. Carter. What happened?" I took a breath. I had just returned from a business trip to Pittsburgh. I'd wrapped things up early and wanted to surprise my wife, Rachel. When I pulled into the driveway, there was a strange car parked outside. I figured she had company, maybe one of her friends. But when I walked inside, the house was mostly dark. The only light was coming from upstairs, and I heard noises. My jaw clenched as I remembered. I went up. In our bedroom, there she was, with another man. They were... I paused, letting the disgust sink in. I yelled. They both looked at me like I was the intruder. I went for the guy, but before I could hit him, he got to me first. Punched me right in the face. Next thing I knew, I was here. "Did you recognize him?" Detective Thompson asked. "No," I said flatly. "Never seen him before." "Had you suspected she was cheating?" "I had my doubts, but nothing concrete," I admitted. Then something clicked. "Wait, I just remembered. There are cameras in the house. I hired a private investigator before my trip. The whole place is wired for video and audio. Everything should be saved on the cloud." The detective perked up. "Can you access it from here?" "I think so," I said. "I've got the login and password on a card in my wallet." He retrieved my wallet from the closet and handed it to me. I flipped through, found the card, and handed it over. "Adam Scott," Thompson read off the card. "Is this your investigator?" I nodded. "He's the one who called 911, gave a statement to the cops, and followed the ambulance here." "We've spoken to him," Thompson said. "He told us he found you at the bottom of the stairs and called 911. No one else was in the house at the time. Let's see what the video says." He opened his laptop and connected to the hospital's Wi-Fi. I logged in using the details on the card, and up came a list of videos. I found the one from the day I came home and hit play. There she was, Rachel, walking into the living room with a hulking bald guy following her. "That him?" Thompson asked. I nodded. "Yeah, that's the guy who hit me." We continued watching. Rachel kissed him hard, then whispered something I couldn't make out. They went upstairs. I fast-forwarded to the next video. There they were in the bedroom. Rachel pulled an envelope from the drawer and handed it to him. He counted the money quickly, then shoved it back into the envelope. "Half now, half when the job's done," she said. My blood ran cold. Had she paid him to kill me? The man grinned at her. "What do you say we seal the deal?" Rachel smirked, and within seconds, she was undressing in front of him. They crawled into bed together, not a care in the world. "Which side does your husband sleep on?" he asked. "Why?" she replied, laughing. "That's the side where we gonna do it," he said with a grin. She pointed to my side of the bed. "Right there. That's perfect," he said, pulling her toward him. "Let's leave a nice wet spot for him." I clenched my fists, watching the betrayal unfold on screen. And then there I was barging in on them. I charged at the man, but he sidestepped, landing a blow to my face. The screen showed him dragging my limp body out of the room, with Rachel standing there, not bothering to help. The video ended. I went back to the catalog and selected the next video. 3 pairs of feet appeared at the top of the stairs, 2 barefoot and 1 with shoes. The big man picked me up as if I weighed nothing and threw me down. My body hit the bottom with a sickening thud, unmoving. Rachel's voice came through, cold and detached. She asked if I was dead. The man didn't know. He offered to finish me off right there, but she refused. Not in the house. She didn't want to deal with more blood than necessary. "Let him lie there," she said. "Maybe I'd do them a favor and die on my own." The man agreed. If I didn't, he would come back later. They talked about leaving and finishing things at her hotel. A few minutes later, they descended the stairs, got dressed, and stepped over me without a second glance. The video ended. Out of sheer curiosity, I opened the next video. It showed Adam entering the house, finding me, and immediately calling 911. He stayed by my side until the paramedics arrived. After that, the footage stopped. Whatever Rachel and her lover planned next, it wasn't happening at the house. I glanced at Detective Thompson. "What now?" He calmly shut the laptop and said they needed to track down Rachel and her accomplice. I confirmed that I had never seen the man before, though Thompson clearly had. Chris Turner, also known as Chris Ham, was a hitman. The kind the feds were hunting for a string of murders. "I was lucky to be alive," Thompson said. "I was still trying to process why Rachel would want me dead." The detective asked about my job and if there were any problems at home. I explained I was a salesman, mostly customer service, and that things between Rachel and me had only gotten strange recently. He asked if I had been unfaithful while traveling, but I quickly shut that down. I would never cheat on her. He seemed to believe me. Thompson changed gears, asking about life insurance. I had a $1 million policy through work, doubling if it was an accident. Rachel was the beneficiary. The conversation shifted to money, and I mentioned winning the lottery recently, $3 million after taxes. I was planning to surprise her with a cruise. Did she know about the money? Only that I'd won, not the amount. I handled all the finances. She never bothered to check. Thompson pointed out the obvious. If something happened to me, she could walk away with $5 million. I logged into my account. Rachel had made 3 large withdrawals, $55,000 each, over the past 12 days. I canceled the joint credit cards and reported her ATM card stolen, while Thompson arranged to freeze her account. When Thompson asked where Rachel might be, I had no idea. She'd usually be at home, but I hadn't a clue now. He suggested Adam might know, and I agreed. I called Adam. He answered on the second ring. He was relieved I was awake and quickly filled me in. Rachel was at the airport, heading to Chicago. Her flight wasn't leaving for another 4 hours, giving us time. Chris Turner wasn't with her yet, but he'd likely meet her soon. Thompson told Adam to keep tabs on her. He would arrange for her to be detained. Once the call ended, Thompson set things in motion, warrants, alerts for Turner, all the pieces falling into place. By the time he finished, the doctor came back to check on me. I would be here for a few more days. Thompson arranged for officers to guard my room in the meantime. Before leaving, he told me to take care. They'd be in touch if anything changed. After Detective Thompson left, I tried to settle down and watch TV, but my mind kept drifting back to Rachel. How could she do this to me? Hadn't I been a good husband? A reliable provider? I thought back to when we first met in college. My father had worked in a factory his whole life, making sure I had the chance to go to college. I studied business and met Rachel Bennett there. From the moment we crossed paths, I was smitten. We dated for a couple of years, fell in love, and got married soon after graduation. I landed a job with a financial services company, helping small businesses improve profits. Rachel started working at a bank, eventually moving from a teller to the mortgage lending department. The first 4 years were a dream. We were intimate almost daily, sometimes more on the weekends. Everything seemed perfect. We even talked about starting a family. But now everything was unraveling. Had it been just about money? A knock on the door interrupted my spiraling thoughts. 2 policemen poked their heads into the room, informing me they'd be right outside if I needed anything. I thanked them and nodded. A few minutes later, another knock came. This time, Adam entered the room. He looked me over, relieved that I was doing better. He mentioned how awful I had looked when they first brought me in. I joked that I felt like I'd been run over by a truck, but I was curious about what was going on. Adam explained that Rachel had been arrested at the airport. She was facing charges of attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. They hadn't found Turner yet, though. The police had staked out my house but had seen no sign of him. Then Adam handed me my phone, saying he'd found it on the floor of the house and had bought a new charger since mine was missing. I thanked him as he plugged it in. He asked if I had contacted a divorce lawyer yet, but I reminded him I had just woken up from the coma earlier that day. Adam pulled out a business card and recommended a lawyer he often worked with. She despised traitors, he said, and would be eager to take my case. After a pause, I asked about what had happened after I was ambushed. Adam explained that Rachel had been planning everything for some time. She'd taken a vacation right after I left for Pittsburgh and hadn't planned on coming back after the attack. She'd been hiding with Turner, moving between motels. Adam had tried multiple times to reach Detective Thompson with their locations, but they kept missing each other. We talked briefly about Turner, but Adam didn't have any leads. He promised to keep digging and pass any information on to Thompson. He reminded me to rest and recuperate, assuring me that he'd check in regularly. After he left, I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. Once my phone had charged enough, I called the lawyer Adam had recommended. The receptionist answered, cheerfully directing me to Laura Scott's line after confirming my name. Laura's voice was warm but professional when she introduced herself. She acknowledged the situation and asked if I was still in the hospital. I confirmed, half joking about being hunted by an assassin. She offered to come to the hospital to meet me in person, a gesture I didn't expect from a lawyer. I agreed, impressed by her willingness to help. About an hour later, Laura arrived, briefcase in hand. We spent the next hour discussing my divorce. Although we lived in a no-fault state, she planned to file on grounds of betrayal and extreme cruelty. She assured me that Rachel's arrest and the fact that she hired a hitman would significantly help my case. Laura made it clear that she'd fight to get me everything in the divorce. With Rachel in jail, I had the upper hand. Just as she was packing up to leave, there was another knock on the door. Detective Thompson entered the room with a smile. Laura greeted him warmly, and they exchanged pleasantries. Thompson sat down, saying he had news. Rachel had confessed everything. She had hired Turner to kill me and make it look like an accident. The reason? Money and lust. She had been having an affair with a coworker named Paul Evans, Turner's nephew. Together, they had planned to elope to Hawaii but couldn't afford it. When Rachel saw the lottery winnings in my account, she saw it as her ticket to paradise. With the insurance payout, she thought she could walk away with millions. Thompson explained that the district attorney would push for life in prison without parole for Rachel and was recommending no bail due to her being a flight risk. As for Evans, the police had him in custody and would be interrogating him soon. If Rachel's claims checked out, he'd be charged too. Turner, however, was still on the run. Almost every officer in the county was looking for him, and until he was caught, Thompson assured me there would be guards at my hospital door and patrols around my house. I shook my head in disbelief. Rachel had never given any hint of unhappiness. Why now? Thompson could only shrug. Money made people do crazy things. He asked how long I'd be staying in the hospital, and I told him the doctor wanted me there for a few more days to ensure I was healing well. Thompson agreed it was a reasonable plan, wished me well, and promised to keep me updated. After he left, I turned to Laura. I asked if she knew Detective Thompson. She smiled, explaining that she had represented him in his own divorce. We talked briefly about the case, and I thanked her for handling everything. I offered to write her a check for her retainer, and she fetched my wallet from my pants. I pulled out a blank check I always kept for emergencies and filled it in with the amount she requested. She tucked it away in her briefcase, thanked me, and promised to stay in touch. After she left, I stared at the TV. It was strange how quickly life could change. As they say, all good things come to an end eventually. After a few weeks, the doctor told me I was ready to go home. During my stay, I'd had several visitors, friends, colleagues, Adam and Detective Thompson. Mike kept me updated on the case against Rachel and the ongoing search for Turner. Paul had been charged with conspiracy to commit murder, and Rachel had received the divorce papers while in jail. Surprisingly, she signed them without objection, not putting up any fight. Laura told me that within 60 days, I would be a free man. I was awarded the house and all our possessions, while Rachel would keep her car, clothes, and personal belongings. I spoke with her parents, and they agreed to take care of collecting everything she left behind. What they did with it wasn't my concern. Adam came by to pick me up from the hospital. As he drove, he casually asked if I had a gun. I told him about the old shotgun my dad had given me on my 17th birthday, remembering how we used to go trap and skeet shooting together. It was one of my happiest memories. I still had the shotgun locked away in its case and used for a long time. He suggested I might want to keep it close, given that Turner was still out there. That night, I pulled out the shotgun. It was in good shape despite not being used in years. I loaded it and, instead of sleeping in the master bedroom, I settled into a deep chair in the living room, the shotgun within arm's reach. The memories of what had happened in the bedroom still haunted me too much to sleep there. Turned out to be a good decision. Late that night, I woke to the sound of scratching outside. Grabbing the shotgun, I scanned the area and noticed the silhouette of a large man by the sliding glass door. He hadn't spotted me yet, but I could see the pistol in his hand. It was Turner. Without hesitating, I flicked on the lamp, and in that brief moment of surprise, our eyes met. He moved to raise his gun, but I was faster. I fired. The shot sent him crashing into the mesh door, his pistol firing wildly into the ceiling. I stood, chambered another round, and fired again, hitting him square in the chest. He collapsed onto the veranda, blood pouring from his body. I called 911, chambered a third round, and cautiously approached the door. Standing over his body, I considered firing again, but flashing lights outside stopped me. Police officers stormed in, weapons drawn. I lowered my shotgun and raised my hands, letting them know I was unarmed. One officer checked Turner's pulse and shook his head. He was dead. After a long night of giving statements, an ambulance arrived to take Turner's body away. They zipped him into a bag and wheeled him out, stopping briefly so Detective Thompson, who had just arrived, could take a look at his face. Mike asked if I was okay. I nodded, still shaken. I'd never shot a man before, let alone killed one. The only thing I had ever shot was a clay pigeon. Mike seemed to understand. He gave a reassuring nod, then asked the officers if they were finished. They were wrapping up, and Mike asked if I wanted to grab a coffee. It sounded like a good idea, so I excused myself to change into something other than pajamas. After changing into jeans and a t-shirt, I returned downstairs. The officers had cleared out and Mike was waiting. We drove to a nearby 24-hour coffee shop. I ordered a mocha with caramel, and Mike gave me a playful grin, teasing that I was drinking liquid candy instead of coffee. It had been a while since I had indulged, so I shrugged it off. We sat and talked about mundane things, fishing, soccer, guy stuff, while we sipped our drinks. After some time, Mike asked how I was holding up. I admitted that I was still processing everything. I had never shot anyone before. Mike shared that he had been in a similar position once as a rookie cop. His first kill had nearly made him sick. But, like me, he had known it was either him or the other guy, and he hadn't been willing to be the one in the body bag. He reminded me that Turner was a trained killer and that I was lucky to be alive. He also reassured me that, thanks to the state's castle laws, I wouldn't face any charges for defending myself. His words gave me some comfort. Before we left, he handed me a card with the name Dr. Megan Clark on it, recommending that I call her. She was a top-notch consultant who could help me deal with the trauma. We finished our drinks, and Mike glanced at his watch, realizing he had to get back to work. He dropped me off at my house, reminding me again not to forget to call Dr. Clark. I thanked him, watching as he drove away. I tried to sleep, but it was impossible. By 7:30 a.m., I gave up, showered, and had breakfast. There was only one thing left for me to do. After making a phone call, I headed to the county jail where Rachel was being held. Sitting in the visiting area, I waited as she was led out. She looked tired, and the orange jumpsuit did nothing for her. When she sat down across from me, we both picked up the phones on either side of the plexiglass partition. "Hi, Rachel." I greeted her as I sat down. Her response was flat, almost lifeless. She acknowledged that she had signed the papers and reminded me that I now had everything. But I wasn't there for the papers. "I want answers," I said, cutting straight to the point. "How long has it been going on with Paul?" She seemed resigned, admitting it had only been 2 or 3 months. I pressed her for more, asking why. Wasn't I enough for her as a husband? As a lover? Had I done something wrong? She hesitated, offering a weak explanation about being charmed by Paul, about how we'd talked about having kids, and how she had feared losing her looks, worried I might stop finding her attractive. Couldn't hold back. "That's bullshit, Rachel," I snapped. "You know that's not a real reason. There has to be more. Was it the money?" Her eyes dropped, and she mumbled something about Paul convincing her they could escape and start over, using the money for a fresh start or maybe even a trip around the world. "So, is that why you decided to kill me?" I asked, the coldness in my voice surprising even me. She admitted that Paul had told her they could take everything, the money, the insurance, without the cost of a divorce. "And he's the one who introduced you to Turner?" I asked, already knowing the answer. She nodded, confirming it. I then asked if she knew Turner was Paul's uncle. She nodded again. I couldn't understand why she would sleep with Turner and in our bed, of all places. Rachel's response was blunt. Turner had offered her a discount if she slept with him in our bed. That was when I walked in on them. "And you just left me for dead?" I said, the weight of her betrayal hitting hard. Tears streamed down her face as she stammered an apology. After a long silence, I broke the news to her. "Turner is dead," I said, watching her face pale. She was shocked and asked what I meant by dead. "He came back to finish what you paid him to do," I said. "I killed him when he broke into the house." She asked how, and I told her it was with the shotgun my dad had given me years ago. She looked at me with those sad eyes, muttering an apology again, asking if I could ever forgive her. I couldn't help but laugh, loud enough that the guard took notice for a moment. I told her, quite simply, that I would never forgive her for what she had done. She had the rest of her life to think about it, and I hoped it had been worth it. Without waiting for her response, I hung up the phone and walked away. She watched me leave, tears still in her eyes. The next couple of months went by quickly. I packed up everything I wanted from the house and, after some renovations, put it on the market. I moved into a nice apartment near my office. I was called to testify at both Rachel's and Paul's trials, and it didn't take long for the jury to find them guilty on all counts. A week later, I was there for Rachel's sentencing. The judge thanked me for my time and sentenced her to life in prison without parole. Paul received the same. But in a way, I had my own life sentence too. Rachel's betrayal and attempted murder took more from me than I realized. My body healed, but emotionally I was wrecked. Dr. Clark diagnosed me with a form of PTSD. For 2 years, my life was on autopilot. I went to work, came home, ate, watched TV, and went to bed. The gym became a regular part of my routine, along with my weekly counseling sessions. But I couldn't bring myself to trust anyone again. Dating was out of the question, and as for sex, well, I had movies and my right hand for company. It was Dr. Clark who finally pushed me to take a step forward. She encouraged me to let go of my fears and ask someone out. I thought about it for a while and finally decided to take the plunge. There were women at my office who had shown interest, but dating a coworker made me hesitant. Still, I eventually decided, to hell with it, and asked Grace, a coworker from another division, to dinner. To my surprise, she said yes. We had a great time, and as the dates continued, I found myself more relaxed around her than I expected. We didn't rush things. Sex happened after the third date, and it turned my world upside down. Grace and I have been dating for about 6 months now, and everything seems to be going well. She's even introduced me to her parents, and we all get along. Will I get married again? I don't know, maybe someday. For now, I'm just taking it one day at a time. Who knows what the future holds? Thanks for watching this emotional story of love, lust, and lies. Hope it touched your heart. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a fresh story every day. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments, so feel free to share your experiences and tell your story.